And joining me now on the road is one of the louder voices that was in favor of the failed Ohio Issue 1, Ohio Republican Secretary of State Frank LaRose. He's also a candidate for the U.S. Senate in 2024. Mr. Secretary of State, as I said, at least you're riding, not driving right now. Thanks for joining me.
That's correct, Chuck. Yeah, on the road, heading to the Tuscarawas County Board of Elections, checking in with our hardworking elections officials that delivered another smooth, free, and fair election for Ohio yesterday.
All right, well, let me start with, look, one of your primary opponents, Bernie Moreno, wants to blame you, says you messed up the messaging when you said, absolutely, this referendum is about the issue of abortion. Do you regret how directly you said that?
You know, I don't regret what I said because I was speaking the truth. And of course, my political opponents are going to cherry pick things out of context, just like that really dishonest commercial did. I gave a 15-minute speech where I talked about all of the many concerns that we have with keeping Ohio's Constitution so susceptible to outside special interest money. One of them is this really radical abortion amendment that's set for the ballot this November. Another one is a massive increase in minimum wage, diminishing our Second Amendment rights here in Ohio. I mean, the list goes on and on. I made that clear that it was never exclusively about one thing. This is just one of the many things it's about.
Look, I think one of the hardest things you were trying to convince people to take power away from themselves, right? You were trying to tell people, hey, we want to make your vote count less. Instead of raising that threshold, it feels like a near impossible task when that's what you were asking voters to do.
That was certainly the message of the No campaign. But as I viewed it, it was about making sure that things were done the right way going forward. Listen, a 50% plus one simple majority is great for policymaking. The day-to-day controversial issues about what people can smoke or not smoke or where they can gamble or not, those are the kind of things that are great for a simple majority. And had Issue 1 passed, Ohio would have continued to have those through our legislature, of course, also through the citizen-initiated law change process that we have in Ohio. But a constitutional amendment should have the moderating influence of bringing together a larger coalition. That's why the U.S. Constitution requires it. And I thought it would have been a really good thing for Ohio to have that as well, so that if you're going to do something as permanent as changing our Constitution, you had, again, that moderating influence of bringing a much larger coalition together.
Do you think the problem was the idea of this referendum sort of percolated after it appeared that abortion was going to be on the ballot, right? I mean, voters are paying a lot of attention to the abortion issue. Sometimes voters don't pay attention to the details of all issues, but they are on this one. The timing of trying to put this referendum on, I mean, it felt shoehorned in.
There always would have been the next thing. Next year, it's a minimum wage increase. People would have said, oh, you're just trying to block that. To be clear, it takes a coalition to bring an issue to the ballot like this. It included people that are concerned about this abortion amendment. And so the timing was, a result of once we could get enough people together in our General Assembly to put this on the ballot, that's when it came to the voters. And as you saw, a large portion of Ohioans voted on this, over 3 million people rather participating. But my saying was that there's never a bad time to do a good thing. And doing this as an August special election made sense to me. And by the way, Ohioans proved that they are engaged in the process, as we had, as I predicted, a large turnout election.
No, we did. The folks over at Susan B. Anthony, they're upset at the business community. They feel as if while they were supportive of what you were trying to do, it was only rhetorical support. You didn't get financial support from the business community. Do you concur with those remarks?
You know, I think their concerns are not unfounded. Listen, the coalition on the right that when it holds, we can get things done on the conservative side involves both social and cultural conservatives as well as business conservatives. I consider myself one of both of those. But when the business community started to think, oh, this is about abortion, they walked off the battlefield, even though this was something that had been a priority for the business community in Ohio for more than a decade. They've been saying for years, you should do something about how easy it is to amend the Constitution. But as soon as the left started yelling, oh, it's just about abortion, then a lot of business leaders said, hey, I don't want to be involved in this. And that's unfortunate.
Well, where are you on the issue? And does the fact that you have 57% of Ohioans, all right, basically saying, hey, we want to check. They don't like what the legislature has done on abortion. That seems to be pretty clear. We'll find out for sure in November. Do you think the party needs to moderate its position a bit?
This to me is a question of where people are morally. I mean, this is one of those issues that for a lot of people, there's not a lot of room for negotiation. I'm pro-life, but I also want to make sure that we're compassionate about this, because a person who's facing an unplanned pregnancy, a woman who's facing an unplanned pregnancy, is having a crisis in her life. And so we need to not just be pro-birth, but also be pro-life. And that means including support for women after they give birth to maybe choose adoption if that's the option they want, or contraceptive options that are non-abortion related that give people other choices. So, yeah, I think that there's a broader conversation to be had. And I think that, when it comes to the state saying that they want to put a check on the legislature, that's always existed. The right way to do that is through the citizen-initiated law change process. But if people don't think our legislature is working properly, there's a simple solution to that.
Yeah.
Every 2 years, we have an opportunity to replace the members of the legislature. People should get more involved in looking at how their state reps and state senators vote. If they don't agree with them, then maybe they should run for office and replace them.
You're running for the U.S. Senate. You're going to be asked this question about federal standards on access to abortion. Do you think there should be a federal minimum put into place or not?
I think that the Supreme Court decision pushing this down to the states is a reasonable approach for now. But as I told you, I'm pro-life, and if a pro-life measure comes before the Senate, then I would vote as a pro-life
What does that mean?
American.
Look, a lot of people say they're pro-life,
Sure.
but they're for 15 weeks. Some people say pro-life,
Yeah.
they're for 8 weeks. The heartbeat bill, things like that. Can you give me some
Well, this is
specifics? What's your definition of pro-life?
Yeah, as you know, any legislative body is got to be a product of people working together to find where they can reach a majority on that. And in the Senate, sometimes that's a 60% majority, back to super majorities, by the way. But, I've voted for the heartbeat bill in Ohio, for example, which I think is a good standard. I personally believe that life begins at conception, but I understand that, there's perhaps room to negotiate on that. Pain capable is one standard that some people have looked at. We have a bill like that in Ohio. And again, I think that it's an important conversation to have, but there's no black or whites on these for most people.
One other litmus test that may come across in your Senate primary, it's the Mike Pence question. Did Mike Pence do the right thing when he certified the elections and did not listen to the former president?
Yeah, listen, I'm a supporter of President Trump. I've endorsed him. I was the only Secretary of State in the country to earn his endorsement last year. But I think that, any leader needs to do what they think is the best thing under the circumstances that they're given. And I believe the vice president believes that he was following the Constitution. I'm not in his shoes. I can tell you that Ohio ran honest elections, but there were things that happened in other states that shouldn't have happened. Do those rise to the level of action to negate those? I don't know. I wasn't in those states, and I don't have the facts in front of me that the vice president had. But I can tell you this, we learn from those things going forward, and it's important that we don't allow those kind of mistakes like other states made to happen in the future.
Let me just try to get it clear. You respect what Vice President Pence did. Do you think he did the right thing?
I don't have all the information to make that decision. He was dealing with information that I don't have. I'm an expert on Ohio's elections. I can tell you in Ohio, President Trump won in a landslide. We had an honest contest. But there were things that happened in other states that shouldn't have happened. In some cases, they're activist lawsuits at the last minute, or interference by tech billionaires that were allowed to pour money into elections administration in a way that had an impact on the result. And so, again, I think that he made the best decision he could with the information in front of him, but I don't have all that information to pass that judgment.
All right. Secretary Frank LaRose, Republican from Ohio. Appreciate you coming on and sharing your perspective. Far too few elected officials do this, even after a tough day at the polls. So thank you. Appreciate it. And be safe.
Thank you, Chuck.
You got it.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.